Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So this is one for those of you who happen to run Unifi gateways and routers. So UGatewayStats is a web application to display Unifi Gateway WAN bandwidth statistics that are pulled from a Unifi Controller with direct API calls. And this supports Unifi controllers that are run as a separate application on your network, run from a cloud key, or those controllers that are integrated into a device such as the Dream Machine or the Dream Machine Pro and other recently released routers. So the application provides multiple time-based upload and download reports for WAN traffic. And UGatewayStats is written in PHP and JavaScript, and we will install it using an Apache web browser inside of an Incus container. So here's the Unifi GatewayStats GitHub site, and the author is a gentleman by the name of Steve Sinchak, and it was produced right about 2 years ago and stands at 0.3 version. And so it really looks like it hasn't experienced any updates since then, but it's still pretty relevant. It talks about the various reports you have, and then it goes into the fact that you're basically going to install a web server and a bunch of dependencies, and then you're going to go off and create the configuration. So moving on over to the web page for Unifi GatewayStats, this is what it looks like here. Apparently it does not have a dark mode per se, but this is where you have the reports. When you first bring it up, by default, you're seeing the what they call the 5-minute reports, which are over the last 12 hours. Here you can see that it says that these are download reports. If you float over any of the bars, it will tell you exactly how much data was transferred during that period of time. Then you have your upload graph, and then finally you have a WAN bandwidth table that has the time period, and in this case each 5 minutes, the download bandwidth, the upload bandwidth, and the total bandwidth. And then you might be saying, well, 0.26 plus 5.21 certainly doesn't equal 0.031, but you have to realize that this is gigabytes and this is megabytes over here. So just be aware of that as you look through the table. And then we have the hourly chart. It does the same thing except over a 7-day period with the downloads, the uploads, and then the bandwidth table that shows the totals. And then we have the daily chart, and it shows over 12 months, and it basically says looks at dates here over that period of time, and again upload download tables and the totals. And then finally we have the monthly chart, and the monthly chart is a bar chart, and it's going to show by month what kind of data transfers you had. And I'm not sure exactly why, because certainly my controller existed back here. I'm thinking that what it may have been is I may have reinitialized my controller at that point in time. So I have download, uploads, and then I have totals over that period of time. So with this in mind, let's go take a look at how we install Unifi GatewayStats. So like other things on my channel, we're going to go ahead and install this in an Incus container. And we've got an Incus launch images :ubuntu/2204. We're naming the name of the container WAN-usage, and we are using the default profile, which goes ahead and defines the root file system. And we're using the bridge profile, which we discussed in the video Incus containers step by step. And we're setting boot.autostart equals to true. And what that does is it starts this container whenever the Incus server boots. After we install the new Incus container, we can do an Incus list command. And here you can see that WAN usage is running and has an address of 172.16.1.76, which is out on my main LAN. Next, we want to go ahead and move inside of the container with an Inca shell WAN usage. And once we get inside the container, it's a good practice to do an apt update ampersand apt upgrade -y to take all of the updates and make sure that our container is completely up to date. With our container up to date, the next thing that I like to do is create myself a user account with an add user, Scott, and I'll go ahead and give Scott a password and verify that password. And then I want Scott to have sudo privileges, so I do a user mod -a capital G sudo Scott. That puts Scott into this sudo group. Next, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the Scott account by doing an su space -- Scott. And then I have a prompt there, and I can do a pwd, and it says I am in /home/Scott. UGatewayStats has a whole bunch of dependencies, and so we're going to go ahead and install those dependencies with a sudo apt install, and first of all Apache 2, which will be our web browser of choice in this case, PHP because it's a PHP application, PHP JSON, PHP curl, Git since we're going to have to clone the application from GitHub, Nano since I want a text editor, and OpenSSH server so that I can connect to the server remotely later on from my user account. So I go ahead and enter my sudo password. Now that all the program dependencies are installed, I want to go ahead and cd over to /var/www.html, which exists in virtue of the fact that we installed the Apache web browser. And now I want to go ahead and clone the project into this folder with a git clone command as follows. Next, if I do an ls command, I will see that I have the UGatewayStats folder, and so I'm going to go ahead and do a cd into that particular folder, and we'll do another ls again. This file called config.php is one we're going to want to edit, so we're going to do a sudo nano on config.php. The first thing you're going to want to do here is come down and put in your controller URL, and this is going to be either the address of where your controller is running, or in the case of something like a UDM or UDM Pro, it's simply going to be the address of that particular router. So in my case, this is 172.16.0.1. The next thing you're going to have is the controller username. And I encourage people to go out to your controller and create a read-only username that'll be able to access statistics but does not have write access, since this program doesn't require it. In my case, I created a username called access. Next, you're going to want to put your password in here, and so we'll put a super secret password in here for the time being. And then the next thing is the site is default, which should be the name of your site ID by default unless you're running a large network. And finally, controller version. And I'm not sure that we need to upgrade this controller version, but you can go ahead and type that in if needed. And then go ahead and do a Control-O to write that file out, and an enter, and a Control-X to exit the Nano editor. Once you've edited that file, you want to go ahead and cd over into /etc/apache2/sites-available. In this folder, you want to go ahead and edit the file 000-default.conf, and in this particular case, I'm going to do a sudo since I don't own these files, of course, and it'll go ahead and bring this up and indicate the document root. So you want to go ahead and move over on the document root and put a / UGatewayStats. Once you've done that, go ahead and do a Control-O and enter to write the file out, and a Control-X to exit the nano editor. And finally, go ahead and do a sudo service apache2 reload. That will go ahead and reload the configuration files that we've just edited. And finally, just as a reminder, let's find out which address we're running on the network, and we can do that with an IP-BR /4 and that will go ahead and show us that ETH0 is running at the address of 172.16.1.76. So we simply move over to our web browser and type in 172.16.1.76, which is the address we just found, and we press enter, and it immediately goes into the Unifi Gateway Stats application. So in summary, UGatewayStats is a very simple website to host inside of an Incus container. And UGatewayStats creates some very helpful reports on WAN traffic for 5-minute, hourly, daily, and monthly charts. And although the application has not been updated since March of 2022, it's still very relevant and works with the current Unifi Controller version. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit your notification bell, and we'll see you next time.